is Thursday, Yudalid Tevis Tovshin Ein Gimel. We are in the Sefer Teres Menachem Sefer Mamar Tovshin Yud Aleph Tovshin Yud Beis. In the Mamar, good morning, in the Mamar Vekibel Hayehudim of Purim Tovshin Yud Aleph, and we are up to Ois Yud, chapter 10, on page Memvov.
Why is spell out the Yud and just not put 50 years there?
Good question.
Who've done it?
I'm not sure if that is the standard or. So we're in the process of discussing what happened at Matan Torah. What was the innovation of Matan Torah over and above what existed before Matan Torah? Because as we know, the fathers, our forefathers, fulfilled the entire Torah before it was given. Was there anything new that was introduced at Matan Torah? And the answer is a resounding yes. Which is the Bittul Hagzera, taking away the decree, removing the decree that existed before Matan Torah. The decree being that the two worlds of the Elyonim and the Tachtenim, the upper realms and the lower realms, there was a chasm between the two. Torah removed that. The Rebbe explained that whereas before Matan Torah, it was not possible to permanently fuse the Elyonim with the Tachtenim, the upper realms with the lower realms, the spiritual with the physical, the holy with the mundane. After Matan Torah, that's attainable, that's achievable. The Rebbe explained that there are 3 levels in fulfilling mitzvahs, and there are 3 levels in learning Torah, which emanate from 3 aspects in what mitzvahs are about and in what Torah is about. There's the Tachtein way of fulfilling a mitzvah. There's the Tachtein way of learning Torah. There's the low way of fulfilling a mitzvah. There's the low way of learning Torah. Fulfilling a mitzvah by rote, or learning Torah for the purpose of knowing what we need to know in order to fulfill the mitzvahs, how to behave ourselves now, to conduct ourselves in our daily lives. There's the Elyon way of fulfilling a mitzvah and learning Torah, the higher way of doing mitzvahs and learning Torah, and that is, in the fulfillment of mitzvahs, it is for the sake of connecting to Hashem. The mitzvahs being 248 limbs of the king, and if you want to connect to Hashem, as the Alter Rebbe says, the only way is through mitzvahs. So there, the motive is the neshama. I want to connect to Hashem. In the learning of the Torah, there is the mitzvah of knowing Torah, which goes beyond what I need to know in terms of how to behave. Even if I know, or if I've already learned everything that relates to how I behave, I still have a mitzvah to know as much of the Torah as I can. So again, this is more related to the neshama. This is the Eliyah in the upper dimension of learning Torah. And then there's something which is greater than the two. In mitzvahs, it is the idea of fulfilling mitzvahs because it's Ratzon Hashem. It's God's will. It's got nothing to do with connecting to Hashem or anything else. Simply because it's Hashem's will, irrespective of what benefits or what emanates as a result of it. It's simply to connect to Hashem. Similarly, in learning Torah, there's the idea of v'hagisa v'yom v'layla, toiling in Torah day and night, which is something that we need to do irrespective of my knowledge in Torah. Irrespective of whether I know the whole Torah already, or irrespective of the fact that I may never know the entire Torah, ever, because my capacity, my faculties are limited. Nevertheless, I have a mitzvah to toil in Torah day and night. So that is like the one which goes beyond the Tachten and the Elyon, beyond the lower dimension and the higher dimension. The Rebbe explained, though, in the last section that we learned, that in Torah we find something which is even beyond that. Let's put it this way: in the Elyon aspect, in that which is higher than the Tachten and the Elyon, higher than the low one and the high one, there is an added element in Torah which we don't really find in mitzvahs, and that is learning Torah Lishma, learning Torah for the sake of learning Torah. V'hagisa, toiling in Torah, is a mitzvah. It's an instruction. You should toil in Torah. Similarly, when I fulfill mitzvah just for the sake of being connected to Hashem, what am I fulfilling? A mitzvah. It's an instruction. So by virtue of the fact that there is an instruction, whether it is in mitzvahs or in v'hagisa, toiling in Torah, that means that there is still some kind of a existence in the person. There's still some kind of an emphasis or some kind of a focus on the individual, albeit in the background. Whereas when we say learning Torah Lishma, learning Torah for the sake of learning Torah, it's got nothing to do with any instruction or any commandment. Yes, of course, there is still the person that's learning, but it's far more focused on something which is outside of the person, as opposed to v'hagisa, and as opposed to fulfilling mitzvahs, to fulfill Hashem's will. In other words, where do we find the greatest emphasis, the greatest highlight on the fusion of the two as a result of something which is higher? In learning Torah Lishma, learning Torah for the sake of learning Torah, because over there, what do you have? You have the Elyon, and you have the Tachton. You have the Elyon, which is what? Torah as it is one with Hashem, limitless, finding expression in the Odom to the greatest extent possible, to the most limitless extent possible. And that's what Torah Lishma is. Learning Torah for the sake of learning Torah, which bursts forth and finds expression in the person. It breaks through the boundaries of time, it breaks through the boundaries of space, as we discussed in the previous ice. So that's basically the point that Rebbe was making before. In other words, what's the essential point? If we want to cut to the chase, as it were, we want to cut away the layers and try to get to the point that Rebbe is trying to make. What's the purpose of Matan Torah? The purpose of Matan Torah is to bring the physical world, to bring the physical human being to such a state where he and the highest levels of spirituality, of godliness, are not only not opposing entities, not only entities that live in two different worlds, not only not entities that live in two different worlds, they are bridgeable and they are fusible. They can combine together. That's the purpose of Matan Torah. Having now understood what Matan Torah is all about, now we can understand what Purim added to Matan Torah, because of which Matan Torah was incomplete until we experienced the challenges of Purim and the salvation of Purim. And this is the point that Rebbe is going to say in chapter 10, and also then discuss the difference between Purim and Chanukah. What happened at Purim? At Purim, the Jews stood in a state of Mesiras Nefesh, of self-sacrifice, actual self-sacrifice. So in other words, when we say that Matan Torah was incomplete until Purim, it means to say that until the Jewish people experienced self-sacrifice in an actual way, Matan Torah was not complete. Why? And again, the question was why. And if you remember, the question the Rebbe asked was, when the Jews said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will hear, we will do and we will understand, at Sinai, they didn't say it was conditional, we will do and we will understand so long as we don't face any existential threats. We will do and we will hear unconditionally. So in other words, they accepted upon themselves that even if they would be facing challenges of the greatest nature, still they would fulfill Torah and mitzvahs. So why was it necessary to actually have that challenge? So this is what the Rebbe says here. According to what we explained before, we could understand the reason why the conclusion, or putting the finishing touches on Kabbalah Torah, on receiving the Torah, is dependent on self-sacrifice, actual self-sacrifice. Ki achibur del yenim v'tachtenim hu, How does this fusion of the upper ones and the lower ones, the upper realms and the lower realms, the spiritual, the physical, the holy and the mundane, how does that take place, that fusion? Who? What has to happen in order for these two to fuse? There needs to be a removal, an annulment, a dulling of that which defines the Elyon, the upper one, by virtue of which he's in his world, and that which defines the Tachton, by virtue of which the low one is in his world. So if you remove those opposing factors, there could be fusion. Therefore, in order for there to be, for Kabbalah Satira to come to its state of completeness, for the receiving of the Torah to be complete, there needed to be the nullification that comes about through self-sacrifice. That is the ultimate removal of the opposing factors of the Tachton. You give yourself away completely. Although when they said, at the giving of the Torah, when the Jewish people said, we will do, we will hear, they accepted upon themselves to do everything that will be commanded, even if self-sacrifice will be necessary to fulfill Torah mitzvahs. So in other words, essentially, when they said Nasav and Nishma, included in that is also what? Mesiras Nefesh, if necessary, giving away one's life if necessary. What happened when they said Nasav and Nishma? We will do under any circumstances. It was only potential Mesiras Nefesh, potential self-sacrifice. It wasn't actualized. If it will be necessary, we'll have that as well. So if I commit myself to such an extent that even if self-sacrifice is necessary, I will do. So then what's driving my Mesiras Nefesh? What's driving my self-sacrifice? From whose perspective is this self-sacrifice? From the Neshama. The Neshama relative to the Guf is like potential relative to the actual. In our world, what's actual? That which it's done. That which is done. How do? You do with your body. When I say, I will have Mesiras Nefesh, and I really mean it, it's potential. It's the Neshama saying that. How do I know? But what do we want over here? We want that what? That the Tachton should be fused with the Elyon. The low one should be fused with the upper one. So what do we need? That Mesiras Nefesh has to find expression, actual expression in the Tachton. Actual expression in the low one. So long as the self-sacrifice is only in potential, in other words, one did not face the challenge of Mesiras Nefesh, of giving away one's soul, who mitzad neshama, then it's only merely driven by the soul. It hasn't yet found expression where? In the body, which is the ultimate tachtin, the ultimate low one. And since the nullification, the removal of the boundaries that contradict the upper one and the lower one, through which this fusion of the upper one and the lower one takes place, needs to be where? Both in the Elyon, in the upper one, and in the lower one. And in our case, when we say the lower one, what are we talking about? We're talking about the body, the guf. Therefore, to bring the receiving of the Torah to its state of completeness depends on actual self-sacrifice. Why? Where does actual self-sacrifice take place? In the body and in the natural soul, as opposed to the godly soul. And when did that happen? That happened at Purim, when Jews were facing what? An existential threat. It wasn't just a threat, there was an actual decree to destroy the Jewish people. God forbid. Now we come to the question, if that's the case, why Purim? Why not Hanukkah? And as the Rebbe mentioned before, it's not only because chronologically Purim happened prior to Hanukkah. It's because there was something fundamentally different between the Mesiras Nefesh, the self-sacrifice of Purim, as opposed to the self-sacrifice of Hanukkah, because of which It's specifically the self-sacrifice of Purim that brought Matan Torah to a state of completeness. And that's the point that Rebbe makes in the next part. Let's see if we can make some inroads. According to this, we will also understand Gam Hamaila, the special quality, the advantage, b'Mesiras Nefesh the Purim al Mesiras Nefesh the Chanukah. What does the self-sacrifice of Purim have over the self-sacrifice of Chanukah? Ki Gam Mesiras Nefesh mepoel li beikim mitzad haneshama. Because also, when we talk about self-sacrifice, how does it work? It's not that the body itself drives itself to give away its life. The soul is the one that drives the self-sacrifice. It's the soul that says, I want to give away my life to God. Right? Elo, Shemesiras Nefesh, the Neshama pe'els gam b'haguf v'nefesh hativis. It's just that how does it work? The self-sacrifice of the body of the soul affects also the body and the natural soul, right? It influences the body to say, listen, this is a situation where we have to give away our life. So who's the one that's motivating in the dynamic between the body and the soul, or the soul, the godly soul and the natural soul? Who's driving who's campaigning for giving away one's life? It's the godly soul, and it influences the natural soul and the body, right? Since the body and the natural soul, so far as they're concerned, from their perspective, they do exist. They are a being. They are an existence. Therefore, the revelation of the giving of the Torah, which in other words means the fusion of the upper ones and the lower ones, through a power that's greater than the two, which comes down into the natural soul and into the body. How? Through their nullification, through self-sacrifice, which is driven by the soul, by the godly soul. That is like something which is added, like an added factor, something additional, unnatural even, if you will, to the natural soul and to the body. What happened at Purim of Matan Torah? We can't do any justice to it because we have to start davening. But basically, and we'll say it inside, please God, tomorrow. The point that I was making here is this: Chanukah, the challenge was against the performance of mitzvahs. If a Jew will perform mitzvahs, his life is threatened. So what was the challenge to? To the mitzvah, i.e., the neshama. It's just that if you don't follow what we say, if you don't change your neshama's focus from fulfilling mitzvahs to the Greek way of living, we're threatening your life. We'll take your life away. But what was the threat? What was the challenge? The challenge was on mitzvahs, on the neshama. So the Mesiras Nefesh was almost a byproduct. The life threat was a byproduct of what? Of the threat to the soul. The main focus was the soul. Purim, it was focused on the body. Haman wanted to annihilate the Jews simply for being Jewish, simply for existing. It had nothing to do with the fulfillment of mitzvahs. And Chanukah, there was an exit. Convert.
But he perceived that converting or breaking away from Judaism as not being Jewish anymore.
Who? Haman?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. We'll discuss that tomorrow. But what was?
You did say that if people converted, then.
Okay, but what was the focus? He had no problem. This wasn't an issue about don't fulfill. There was no gzeda. You know what I mean? It was an existential threat against the Jews. His motivation was to destroy the Jewish people.
It wasn't about the mitzvahs.
It wasn't about the mitzvahs. The main focus was the body.
You said one Purim, if they converted, it wouldn't have helped, or you trying to say?
We'll discuss that tomorrow. But immediately when you look at the gzeda of Chanukah and the gzeda of Purim, you see a fundamental difference. The focus there was what? The Greeks wanted the Jews to forget that it's your will. They had no problem with the Jews fulfilling mitzvahs. They had a problem with the Jew fulfilling mitzvahs, which was overtly and completely godly. Chukim, which have no human reason. But a mitzvah that makes sense, fulfill it. Take out God from it. So the focus was to remove the neshama. The fact that life was threatened was a byproduct of that. Purim, the focus, the threat was, the decree was, stop existing as a Jew. Your existence disturbs me. Your physical existence disturbs me. That was Ham's problem. So the Mesiras Nefesh of Purim was far more related to what? To the Tachton aspect. To the body. So therefore, specifically, the Mesiras Nefesh, the self-sacrifice of Purim, is what brought Matan Torah to its state of completeness, rather than the Mesiras Nefesh of Hanukkah. And that is why, to take it a step further, that is why the celebration of Purim, getting to the state of Adal Yada, going out of your limitations, meaning to say fusing with the Elyon, fusing with Hashem Himself, at the highest level, Lo Yada, how do you accomplish that? Libisume, through physicality, through drinking, through eating, and through that coming to the state of Lo Yada. Again, the idea of fusing the highest levels of godliness, finding the expression in the lowest levels of the Tachton. That's roughly what Rebbe is trying to say here, and we'll flesh out, please God, tomorrow.